So what I'm trying to do is show people, here's the leverage we have. And by the way, employers have huge leverage that they have not even started using. So I have 8 chapters in the book that are focused on what individuals can do, looking at different scenarios where people need advice. And then I have 3 chapters for employers. And I think employers are really the sleeping giant in all this healthcare reform battle. Employers have been passively passing this cost on to their employees. That's what's been happening over the past decades. It's now become so unbearable and shameful that everybody knows it, because everyday working Americans just can't even afford these deductibles and high premiums that they're being forced to pay. So I think that if employers and employees could get on the same page and realize how much of their money is being unjustly burned and wasted and squandered by our healthcare system, we have what they need to survive. They need our money. If they don't have our money, they've got nothing. And so what we need to do is identify there's price variation for every product in every market. Find the people who are giving you the low price, the fair price, and reward them with your business. And if somebody is charging you a high price, don't give them your business. It's really as simple as that. And once we start, you're seeing that now where more employers who are self-funded are entering into direct contracts with primary care doctors or even with specialists. You see, like Walmart has their Centers of Excellence plan, where if you need a knee replacement, they say, well, you can go anywhere you want, but if you go to this center in your region that we have a direct pay relationship with, we'll waive all your copays, all your deductibles, all your cost sharing, and you'll get that paid for 100% by the employer-sponsored health benefits plan. Nothing out of your pocket. The quality is actually going to be better, and the care is going to be a lot cheaper. And so you see more progressively minded employers creating these different models. And I think that really is the future of where we're going and where we need to go. There can be debates. I feel like Medicare for All is like a political football that people like to kick back and forth, use as a talking point to rile up their base. But the difficulty of putting something in place like that, the obstacles that would have to be overcome are absolutely enormous. Whereas what we can do right now is employers and employees can get on the same page. They can see how they've been exploited, and they can start going to the people who treat them fairly and shunning the ones that don't. And sometimes the ones that don't treat us fairly are the big brand name marquee insurance companies and medical facilities. Those, frankly, are some of the worst offenders, and we need to shun them.
Yeah, Andrew and I have talked a lot. I don't love the concept of your healthcare being tied to your employment. I think that in the 21st century economy, it makes less and less sense over and over. The more you unpack, you peel back that onion. But it is a competitive differentiator for employees or for employers to say, "Hey, you come work here, like your healthcare is covered. We got your back." And good companies do that.
But let me just point out something here. I'm trying to reframe the way we think about this stuff, because there's even a myth of this idea of rich health benefits, right? Because all of that money that the employer is paying in health benefits belongs to the employee in the form of the employee compensation.
You're saying they're paying too much and it should be going to the person.
Yeah, that's just taking more money out of your wages. So these rich health benefits that all the white collar workers get.
Touché.
They're being fooled. This is how the system wants you to think about it. Oh, your employer's paying. No, you're the one paying for this.
You're right.
The employer is funding the compensation, and then we're compensated through our wages, our health benefits, our paid time off, our hopefully a retirement plan contribution. So that's our benefits package. That is our pool of compensation. But 100% of the money, once the employer funds our health benefits, that all belongs to the employee. And I compare this to like your employer taking you out saying, "Hey, I want to take you out to a fancy restaurant. Let's go out for dinner." So you go to this 5-star place. Your employer says, "Order whatever you want. It's on me." You're like, "Great." So, you're getting the steak, you're getting the flambe dessert, wine. Well, they bring the check and they put it on the table, and your employer reaches into your wallet and pulls out your credit card and pays the bill. That's what it's like when you have rich health benefits that are supposedly paid for by your employer. It's not paid for by your employer, folks. It's coming out of your compensation. And so then there's less money available to pay you wages. And if you look at the studies that have been done, it shows wages are stagnant in the United States over the last 2 decades, in large part because healthcare costs are consuming employee compensation at an unreasonable rate.
That's fascinating. And that's right, because I pay, depending on the company we've run, it's $500 to $1,000 a month per employee. And you can get scale on that. You can dial up, dial down the benefits. And in most cases, and what I just talked about, let's say I land at $750 an employee right in the middle there, the employee still has to pay for crap. Like it doesn't even fully. So not only am I taking $750 a month from you, the employee, but also you're still stuck with whatever the difference is in your actual medical bills. It's a mess. Your book talks about this, and your website will eventually have advice for people to start to navigate this. I love the advice on how to go to small claims court, because that sounds daunting and like a pain in the butt. And it's probably not. I mean, it's time consuming, right? But it's, if done well. I mean, a lot of judges, when it's the small human versus the big company, they're inclined in that type of court to side with the human, especially if there's someone who probably takes the time to read your book and knows their stuff, if you will. Another thing you say in your book is talk about making friends with your debt collector. How does that work? Because that's like, I don't know, maybe it's like you were in ministry. Like I think back in like biblical terms, it's like we don't like the debt collectors or whatever it was. I mean, maybe Jesus did, but
that's right. The tax collectors are the worst, right? Yeah. The I would say the debt collector is the modern day tax collector, scorned. The parasite on humanity, right? So I think the thing is that I talked for this chapter. So in each chapter, I tried to feature an expert who could be like a guide into this world to help us, to show us how to win, right? I don't know personally. I thankfully have not had medical debt, thankfully. And so I haven't had to encounter this myself. But I talked to Jerry Ashton, who founded the charity RIP Medical Debt. And what he used to be a debt collector for decades in healthcare. And so Jerry knows the ins and the outs of the industry, and that led him to start this charity that actually buys people's medical debt and forgives it. So I asked Jerry, what's the right approach here? How do you handle this? And he explained, again, medical debt, like your medical bills, you don't want to avoid it when the medical debt collector calls you. In fact, the first thing you want to do is dispute the debt in writing immediately. Even if you think, oh, I did go to that doctor, I went to that hospital, dispute it in writing, make them prove that they're the ones that own the debt, that they're the ones that are justified to collect for it. Also, I would assume that any medical debt that's out there is based on erroneous bills and jacked up unfair prices, because that's the standard in the industry. So I would not assume personally that any medical debt is as a result of just somebody not paying an honest bill. And so it's also, I think, one of the just great shames of our country that we have this problem. But the point is, you have to negotiate with that medical debt collector to get out from under the debt. Let's say it's a legitimate debt. You're going to dispute it. But let's say you're going to you need to come to an agreement. I like to use the term, we need to come to an agreement that works well for both of us. So when you're talking to that medical debt collector, you need to understand how much money can that debt collector get from you and still be seen as a winner in his boss's eyes.
I did
right? I won. Hey, boss, I won for you. I collected.
Right.
And the surprising thing is, what Jerry told me is, if your debt gets sold to a debt buyer, it was probably sold for pennies on the dollar. He said maybe a nickel on the dollar at the most. So therefore, if you owe $1,000, the hospital says you owe $1,000, it would have been sold to a debt collector for what's 5%? $50. In other words, if you pay more than $50 to that debt buyer, they're profiting. So I asked Jerry, what do you think is the range, the ratio of discount that you think would make the debt buyer and debt collector feel like they got to win? He said probably 15%. So let's say you're going to try and get that $1,000 you owe down to 15%. This all comes now down to negotiation, right? I'm sure you've done a lot of negotiating. I've done some negotiating in my time. I love that process, but it doesn't help to have it be hostile and confrontational. So you're going to want to cuss that debt collector out. You're going to want to tell them how unfair it is that they're coming after you, what a scumbag they are to be in the business they're doing. I mean, you're going to maybe want to say all those things, but what if you said, hey, look, I would really love to pay you this. The problem is I don't have the money. And unless you can give me a massive discount, I am not going to be able to pay anything to you. And you're just going to take an L on this one. So tell me, let's talk. Let me tell you about my family. I got bills, have them get to know you, get to know them as a human being. And then if you do come to an agreement, Jerry's other big piece of advice is do not ever enter an agreement with a medical debt collector that you won't be able to stay true to. Because if you violate that agreement even once, you miss one payment on a payment plan, they will come after you then for the entire amount. It's the whole thing. So just hold them off. Your credit's already hurt because of the medical debt. Hold them off. Make them think they're not going to get anything unless they get a great deal from you. Be the friendliest person they've ever met so that, they actually want to give you a good deal. It's amazing how much,
more bees with honey, whatever.
More bees with honey, right?